This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
Everything is Awesome is part of Courts and Parts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelant Friends, and Podstalgic at courtsandparts.com.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. 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 That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No.
You're awesome. No, you are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And we are officially in Philadelphia Podcast Festival season. I'm really excited to chat with this week's guest, Josh, who is part of the festival. Make sure you check out the full schedule for the Philadelphia Podcast Festival at phillypodfest.com/schedule. It kicks off on June 22nd, Friday night at Good Comedy Theater, and it goes all weekend long, the 23rd, the 24th, and I believe there's even a show on Monday night on the 25th, and you can see shows like A Quest for Magic and Steel, Victims and Villains will be on that day, All My Fantasy Children, and Party of One. All these great shows are performing the first weekend of the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, so check them all out. The second weekend is just as good, maybe better, I don't know. But you have shows like, Everything is Awesome. That's right, Everything is Awesome. You got, Full Belly Laughs. You got a lot of great shows. You got Nerds with Words. So it's a great thing that the Philadelphia Podcasting Society puts together. I love the festival. This is my third year doing it. Super excited. So make sure you check out phillypodfest.com/schedule for the complete schedule. Josh is the host of Victims and Villains, and it is such a wonderful podcast. It's labeled Where Pop Culture Meets Suicide Prevention, and he's not just sitting around talking about pop culture like I do. He's actually going out and doing something about it, and he does speaking events and panels, and he does all these different mixtures of live shows to help bring awareness to suicide prevention and whatnot, and he's doing really good work. And speaking of his live shows, as I mentioned, he's going to be doing the Podcast Festival on June 23rd at Amalgam Comics and Coffee House. I love that venue. I've done 2 shows there. Episode 100 of Everything is Awesome was done there live, and it was such a blast. He'll be performing at 3 p.m. He's, I think, the 3rd or 4th show in the lineup that day. So make sure you head out there and not only support Amalgam and support the festival, but support a show that, A, took the time out of their day to come and be a guest on this show. That's really important to me. But also, more importantly, a show that is more than just people sitting around. That's important. I love that in podcasting. I think that's important in podcasting, but this is also a show about suicide prevention. It has a meaning behind everything they do, besides just entertainment. Entertainment's important, but suicide prevention's even more. I don't think there's anything greater than that. So check them out. So let's get into the show. Josh and I sit down and we chat about all things nerdy. We spend very little time about the podcast because him and I chatted about his podcast heavily last year. And you can go back. I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to our first conversation. But this year we sit around and we just have a general nerdy pop culture discussion. And I really enjoy our discussion near the end when we get real full-on nerd and talk DC Comics and Tom King's Batman run, Snyder's Batman run, Harley Quinn, and Justice League and stuff like that. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Josh right here on awesomepodcast.com. So how you been? It's been, literally almost a year, I think, since we talked.
Yeah, I feel like every time I do the Philly Podcast Fest and we get in, it's like, how much longer is it till I get an email from Kevin now?
Well, now this is your second year doing it, right?
Yeah, we did it last year. We had Kalani Carballo at Amalgam Comics, and Kalani is a independent comic book creator out of New Jersey. We've done a lot of his books on our YouTube channel, and so getting to like go in depth with him and some of his themes and books it was really cool. And, like this year, like we have something completely different planned for it. So
that's cool. Now, if I remember correctly, that while that was your first festival, Philadelphia Podcast Festival show, it wasn't your first live show, right?
No, like what I've done, like before last year, we had done we had done a couple panels at that point. We had done several speaking engagements, couple cons. We've really grown in the last year since the last Philly podcast. So
I'll tell you, the panel game is something that I've been trying to get, like I was trying to get into, and we finally did it this year, and it started out at this like weird place of me saying, how cool would it be just to like run a panel, not thinking that like Comic-Con, specifically Wizard World, would not like accept something like who am I? You know, I'm not anybody. And I also had some driving, like I have this, and it's very one-sided, this like faux rival in Chris Hardwick, and where years and years ago I did this show called the Zomcast, and we the original name of the show was called The Walking Dead Zomcast, and it was a recap show on the Walking Dead, and I fully blame him for getting us a cease and desist from AMC.
wow.
Yeah. And now a lot of people will point the finger at me for saying, because he was doing a live show in Philly, and I had emailed him to say, hey man, like I would love to open, like this was in like maybe the first year of the podcast festival. It may not have even been a thing at that point. Live podcasting was really only regulated to like the Kevin Smiths and the Chris Hardwicks of the world. Like it wasn't super popular, and it wasn't something that, like in Philly, no local podcast at that time was doing a live show. So I was like, so we didn't know how it worked. And I was like, how awesome would it be to open for him? So I sent him an email about it to open for him, and then within like 24 hours, I got the cease and desist.
Wow. Why?
Because we were using The Walking Dead in our title. Mind you, there was a podcast called The Walking Dead Podcast that was not an official AMC podcast. There was, and I think part of the issue was we were also gaining traction on Stickcam. I don't know are you familiar with Stickcam?
I have never actually heard of Stickcam.
So, well, it's not a thing anymore.
Okay.
It's something very, very bad happened, and they eventually were shut down because of it. And you would have to like Google it to get the complete details, but they were like the live streaming premiere spot to go to. YouTube wasn't doing live streaming yet. Twitch wasn't a thing. You basically had like Stickcam, U Broadcast, and I think Blog TV were like the three big ones, and like Stickcam was the YouTube of live streaming back then. Like it was like the most popular thing for that, and we were doing live podcasting on that, and with my main show, they weren't like they did not like my main show at all. But I think it was because it was too similar to another show that I was part of that I was contracted on, and they contracted with them. But Stickcam really liked our Walking Dead show and was like, hey, we want to try to do what AMC's doing, and offering like an after show type of market where we have other podcasts talking about shows. We want to, trial that with you guys. So we were hitting like, maybe 10 to 15,000 views an hour on that show with Stickcam. And so that was happening while I also emailed them to be like, hey, let me open for you. So I think a lot of factors with our rising popularity had to and me saying, hey, look at me, Chris Hardwick, had to do with us getting shut down, basically. and whatnot. But yeah, so back to the point is I was like, hey, I want to be Philadelphia's Chris Hardwick. Like, I just want to moderate panels in Philadelphia and just do after show talk shows basically. So yeah, so the panel game, like, so what do you guys do for your panel before I get into my garbage?
I mean, it really depends on the audience or the subject. Like we haven't done a panel in probably 6 months, but like we're gonna be doing one in the fall that, if everything goes through, it'll be focusing on heroes like Batman and Black Lightning, and but essentially, like we had the last panel we talked about how like we talked about kind of how to get into comics and like the two, like the big two, Marvel and DC, versus you know, independent, like the difference between the two, like how it feels like working on such iconic characters. And then we did another one back in, about a year and a half ago about suicide in suburbs and the rate that it's gone up since the late 80s, and how to be more effectively. But usually, like, if we do speaking engagements, not just panels, it's usually about like training people to recognize suicide prevention, so to say. But a lot of, like, when we're doing Comic-Cons, it's like, all right, like, how can we take this area of pop culture and take our way of breaking the stigma around mental health and suicide prevention and connect these two.
And that's, I mean, and I don't want to be a retread of our interview last year, but like that's an amazing, obviously platform that you guys have and use to get that message out. And I was gonna. So you guys do a mix of like Comic-Cons and non-comic nerdy events when you do speaking / panels, right?
Yeah. So this year we've done everything from churches, youth groups, after school programs. We did a music fest a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
so
neat.
I mean, like we the way that because we cover pop culture and because every different culture, whether you're talking comic books or music or tattoos or filmmaking or YouTube's, like every one of those, like people, like that suicide has a way of being able to be implanted. Anyone can kill themselves, and so that's why, like, our format of our show and like the way that we do events, like we can literally do anything. Like we the day before the Philly podcast, we have a local. We're doing a punk rock show.
Oh, that's neat.
So,
that's neat.
I mean, it's like our format that you can literally take it anywhere, and it's not just like, hey, this is the studio, but like out of studio, like we're able to do, in the studio, we will take bring on a creator, talk about their stuff, we'll talk about their area, like favorite area of pop culture or like what's relevant to that time, and then like we also have a platform to showcase music and stuff like that. So,
well, and it seems like that's almost the format you went with last year's festival show for Philly, like doing the interview style with the guests. I guess without spoiling anything, like how different, like, are you? Because you guys are at Amalgam again, right?
Yes, we are at Amalgam on June 23rd at 3 p.m.
So how different do you plan on spinning it?
So this year we've actually been able to partner with a network. So
nice.
they kind of sponsor, and so the head of that network actually lives in Philly, and we are going to be doing a tour actually through Philly and Pittsburgh and Jersey, and going to be hitting up different cities with a group out of North Carolina that does something similar to what we do. And it started out as a joke, and it's now like kind of like emphasizing. So like we're going to be doing a review of Toy Story, because the entire tour is going to be revolving around Toy Story.
Oh, interesting.
So like we're talking about like Toy Story like review essentially like for the
Yeah.
this upcoming podcast fest.
That's I the tour sounds amazing. Like that, I feel like is eventually what I want to get to is doing something like that. Like that. What one of these years be like? You know what? I've done this, this, and this. Let's check off tour next. And just because that's like I said, like this year we actually we do every January, and I say that like it's happened for a long time, but for the last 2 Januaries, and this coming one will be the 3rd time that we do it. Once I get the details finalized, we do a 1-day festival, podcast festival that raises awareness for cancer and raises money and stuff.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and it's such a fun day, it's such a fun event, but this past year, which was the second time we did it, it was, even though like I had already done it the year before, this year felt way more stressful, and I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't give it away, but the one key sponsor we had for the show like did very little to no legwork to help promote it, and that's what I asked for. Like most sponsors are like providing something for us. Like we had, Steel Empire did our sound this past year. Tattooed Mom was our venue and stuff like that. Zencaster, provides me normally with the way I record my podcast. So all those sponsors play a key role. But this particular sponsor, like the main thing that they had to do was just help promote the show and help get butts and seats. And there was very little to zero promotion about that. And so walking into that event that day, I was like an angry person about what was happening. And I definitely walked away saying like, I don't know if I want to do live podcasting anymore. Like I was, wow. I mean, that's how much it affected me because, there's a lot of work, as that goes into not, podcasting in general, but especially a live podcast or a live performance of some sort or speaking event. So like, all the work that I put into that felt like it was for nothing, and especially like, the cause and the involvement that this particular sponsor had, like, there's no reason that they should have been helping, get people out there for it. So, so it changed the way I looked at live shows, and I was like, all right, well, a month before that, we did a show at Amalgam for our 100th episode. And instead of doing the normal late night talk show shtick that I normally do, I was like, let's play like a game. Like, let's get, I don't know. Do you know the Party of One podcast?
Yeah, they actually came up right after us last year, so got to sit for theirs.
Yeah, Jeff is an amazing dude, an amazing storyteller. And he's also, he's a really good GM and also does like a game. He designs games too. So we had him come on and run a game that he's in the process of. I think he's done testing it now. But that was the game that we played was part of his beta test for Mission Accomplished, and it was such a fun time. We brought a bunch of improv people out, and it was just a fun time. Amalgam's a really good space for that. Like I've done the sit down talk show late night style at Amalgam, and I've done a game, and I don't know how you felt after your show. I mean, obviously you enjoyed it enough to do the festival again, and obviously Amalgam is like a really good venue for your your themed show, but like the late night talk show like gimmick does not work there, at least not for me, because like it's so generic. But like the game thing did, and that I was thinking about that. I was like, well, I guess if maybe like we take a couple months off and I just kind of get my head back in the game and we do something different, and that's like a very last minute. We applied for the Great Philadelphia Comic Con to do a panel there in Greater Oaks, PA. Have you been to that con or have done panels there or anything?
We actually covered it as press this year, so that's another thing that we started doing this past year was doing like kind of stepping back from panels and building more relationships with independent creators.
That's so great.
To do press. And so like Blair Webb, who we've done now two conventions with, he is such a talented dude, and like I cannot recommend, like, if you're passed through the Living Corpse crew, stop at their table. Like, they're awesome dudes.
It was I've never been to that con before. Last year, or I mean, I guess like a month and a half ago, when it happened, was the first time I've been in that building for. I had free tickets to like Minecraft Con or Fair or whatever that was there last year, and it was such an interesting space because it was for Minecraft Fair. It was literally just everything was happening in like a different section of I guess the Greater Oaks Expo Hall, and like there was no secluded rooms for panels. Like everything was just like kind of behind curtains, and like you could just, if you really listened, you could hear it. So like I didn't know what I was expecting walking into the Philadelphia Comic Con, but it really I think before that, I guess PAX Unplugged I did go to. But really, like the comic book themed con, Greater Philadelphia was the first one I went to in years. Like I think the last thing I went to was Wizard World in like 2009 or something.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just I didn't go. I don't know why I didn't go in 2010 and 11, but like since 2012 I've been I've had a kid, so.
It's expensive, like when you go with kids.
Oh yeah, and also just like now that my son is 6.5, he might be into it, and I've been teasing the idea of bringing him to one, but like, and he's also in school, so it's like, all right, well, like I'm only going one day out of even though I like Wizard World, I had the opportunity to go all 4 days. I just went one day. But Greater Philadelphia, I was only scheduled to go to the one day, and my fiance was out and about doing stuff. I think she had a bridal shower or something to go to that day. So like there was no easy, and I'm busy like doing a panel, so like I can't play dad and do a panel at the same time. So
right.
But it was I remember listening to my buddy talk about Wizard World last year because he ran a table there, and I remember like the last year I went, like it felt very fan friendly. Like all the celebrities were secluded somewhere where you couldn't even walk by and say like just like see them and whatnot. So Greater Oaks was complete opposite of that. Me and Garrett Smith from the I Like to Movie podcast. He was part of the panel. I picked him up on my way to the con, and we were just walking around. I was like, this is amazing. Like, obviously you were there. So like the only person that was secluded was Val Kilmer. And even that, like he was just like, you could walk past his booth. He just had like a curtain around it.
Yeah. I really was not sure what to expect. I reviewed the book last year for our YouTube channel called The Rejected, and one of the guy that wrote it was one of the guys that does the Greater Philadelphia Comic Con, Stan, whose name I can never pronounce, and he kind of swayed our interest in covering it for press, and so this was probably, I think, like the fourth or fifth con we had covered for press, and I really wasn't sure what to expect because, like, when you're walking in, I'd never been to Oaks. So, like, going in, we parked on, like, the one side of it, and then you have to essentially walk.
Yeah.
It's such a long way because, like, you finally get in, and we weren't the only ones there that weekend. Like, it was, they had, like, a New Age con that was there, too.
Yeah.
And then they had like, but yeah, like I loved the feeling that when you first walk in, Artist Alley is the first thing you experience. Mm-hmm. That's the way a con should be run because, yes, people are gonna go to see the celebrities like Val Kilmer and the cast of Black Lightning and all those other guys. But the thing about the Comic Cons is that people that are trying to make it, like independent artists, they're the ones that should be like up in front. Whereas New York Comic Con, you go in and it's like massive, like it's just a smorgasbord, and the artist alley's like down in like the far right corner, buried in under a tomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never been to New York Comic Con, but from what I'm understanding, it's now like even bigger than San Diego.
It is, and the thing about it is that it's more equipped to be that way. And it's better equipped than that way because, like, from what I'm told, like, I have friends that live out in San Diego, and they've described that the space of how they go about doing San Diego is very, very tiny for the amount of people that they're trying to get in. And New York's just bigger. So...
And I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do, but the people that run New York Comic Con, they are bringing Keystone Comic Con to Philly in September. So I'm going to be it's going to be interesting because I'm trying to go to that as long as I don't have to pay, basically, because I'm cheap. But we applied for panels there, and actually they just opened up press apps, so I might apply for a press application too. But I'm interested to see what that is, and I think it's an unfair comparison to the Greater Philadelphia Greater Philadelphia Comic Con in Oaks, because that seems like to me that was just so indie that it was awesome, and like indie in the fact that I found out that I had a panel a week before the show.
Yeah, same here. Like we didn't get cleared for press, so like I kept emailing, and I was like, are we in? Are we in? Are we in? I didn't hear anything, so like we didn't have like a place to stay. Like I didn't have I had to make a lot of like runarounds to like be able to do that convention.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It seems like they and I don't know if maybe because I mean they've been around forever, but like it seems like maybe this year was just like really big, and they didn't, because like the cast of Black Lightning is obviously huge to get hot on the heels of I think the season finale, and you have Val Kilmer. You have like it was a pretty good like celebrity guest. Like years past, I think I've looked and I was like, oh, like just it's people that like, oh, it would be like neat to see, but I don't really want to see. It was like seemed like it was maybe the first year they had like they were like quote unquote a contender to go against like Wizard World with the celebrities they got. And I just don't know if they were like equipped to handle the traffic that they got. Maybe I don't know, because like they didn't email, like they've released the schedule, but they didn't email at least a handful. Like I had another friend doing a panel or scheduled to do a panel, and he couldn't do it because they didn't let him know. And because it was the first panel that was the first panel we ever did that I've ever run, and I had no idea what to do. Like I had so many questions, and like literally up until the day of the event and like getting there, like they were just like it seemed so unorganized. And I don't like. I loved the con, and I 100% want to do it again. And I like everyone was super nice that I talked to, but it just so I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking crap on them, but like it seemed like. And unorganized in a good way, meaning like they didn't expect the turnout, or they didn't expect to like have all this pressure, I guess, with having these guests. I don't know what it was. It felt like for a con that's been around that long, like they should have had, I guess, they should have been more prepared, or not. No, that's not what I want to say. I understand why they weren't prepared, because they had, like I said, the cast of Black Lightning there. It seemed really weird the way things were handled, and I think it was because of having such like a talented group of celebrities there.
I literally can't speak to like anything other than like, I mean, we made 2 calls, so like us making 2 to 3 calls, like it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, so like I can't speak to like the unorganized side of them, so honestly, like, we kind of didn't really know anything about it behind the scenes. I was just kind of like, kind of wish I would have known sooner, but I mean, everything worked out in the end. So like,
at the end of the day, that's it. Same for us. It worked out in the end. It was a cool experience, and like we're the last panel of the day on the last day of the con, so like it was like a decent turnout and whatnot, but like that was like what I needed to be like, hey, you know what, like when I found out that we were accepted a week beforehand, so while I was dealing with all like trying to figure out what we were gonna do with that, I was like, hey, why not like apply to Wizard World too? Which was 2 weeks out from there.
Yeah.
And they were, I don't know why they were still accepting applications, but they were. So we applied to do the same exact panel there, which was about the 10 years of Marvel, and like that like was like last year I said I want to find a way to get into doing cons, and like Wizard World specifically because that's like the big Philadelphia con. And that like it blows my mind that they said yes to us, because like again, that's like Greater Oaks I get, because after being there, like it doesn't seem like a place that's, you know, they didn't reject any panels, so it seems like it's a place that you can kind of easily get into, because they're more like indie than they are mainstream. Like I imagine the people that are running it are probably local, the Greater Philadelphia guys, versus Wizard World, you know, is I think an LA based company that does a touring convention. Same thing with Keystone. I guess Reed Pop is kind of turning into like a touring convention and making like instead of having the Wizard World brand, they're just having like a city specific brand, but it's the same con over and over again.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so have Wizard World, like, have you done, I assume you've been to Wizard World, but have you done panels at Wizard World before?
I have not been to Wizard World, and we actually got offered a chance to do press for Wizard World this year, and we had already committed to doing a music fest, so I missed out on it. But I mean, I'm not gonna say that I made the wrong choice, because like obviously a lot of the culture that we deal with is spotlighting independence, and we got to spotlight and meet a whole bunch of new independents, and a tour came out of it. So you know, it was great. Yeah.
No, and I'll tell you, now again, Wizard World I think has changed. So I went to Wizard World this year, obviously, and I only went for the day that my panel was scheduled. We just had too much going on in my life to go for the whole weekend. But walking around that Friday is when our panel was. They completely went back to like I think the first year I went was like 2005 or 2006. And it reverted back to that, which is actually like a Philly, Greater Oaks Philly Comic Con feel, where like you could walk, you walked in, it was Artist Alley, the celebrities were kind of in the center of the room, but you could walk, like not one celebrity was like roped off. You could easily get to any of them, or not. Like, I mean, you still needed like tickets to get, you know, the special photo ops and whatnot, and you had to stand in line to get the autographs. But like I said, the last time I went, it was like, hey, you need like a special VIP pass to get beyond this point to even walk past the celebrities, let alone get autographs and whatnot. But this year, it felt really good. It felt like Greater Oaks. It felt more like an independent run Comic-Con. And it was, I would say, you know what, the only thing I would have done differently, it wasn't Artist Alley that you first walked into. It was a bunch of like exhibitors and vendors that you walked into first. And then it was Artist Alley. And then they were all on one side, celebrities on the other side. So I think I would have reversed it. I would have had the vendors in the back and had Artist Alley up front. For the, you know, same reasons that you mentioned earlier, is that indie spotlight, because there was only now, and maybe I just don't recognize a lot of names, but there was only maybe like 10 to 15 names that like I recognized from like, you know, pop culture. Like Greg Capullo was there. He wasn't there Friday, but his table was set up, and it was weird that he was like halfway back and not in Artist Alley, like not in the front of Artist Alley.
Yeah, that's what I found is weird, and I don't think Wizard World's the only one that does that, because when we went and did New York Comic Con last year, the way that their Artist Alley is set up is that they just go by alphabet. Like that, it's not about talent; it's about wherever you line up in the alphabet. So you could have one person right here that has worked on a Batman book, and then one person right here that does Batman art. And there was a friend of mine, our artist, actually, our in-house artist. She lives out in Illinois, and she does. This will be the second year she's done it, but last year she did Superman Celebration, which is like a mini convention celebrating Superman. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I mean, she's never worked on a book or anything, but you know, she has a following, but she was telling me that 2 tables down from her was Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it's like you know, these conventions, like everyone does them differently. So there's a rhyme or reason, and I think New York is my favorite that I've experienced in that way, because if I'm looking for a specific artist, like a couple years ago, I was looking for, first time I ever went, I was looking for Francis Manipal and Brian. I cannot remember the guy's name, but they both worked on the first like 25 issues of, maybe 30 issues actually, of the Flash New 52. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wanted to go there to see them because I had just like gotten into the Flash, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
Yeah, I really wanted to go back to Wizard World on over the weekend to meet Greg Capullo, because he I was not a DC guy until the New 52, and very specifically the Scott Snyder Capullo run on Batman New 52. And I don't think I read at the time. I was, you know, because our parent website thatentertains.com, we review DC books now. But back then I wasn't reviewing them, and I had to pay for everything, so I was very limited on what I could read, and I was a Marvel guy, so a lot of my money went to Marvel or to like Image, and then DC was I was like, you know what, the New 52, I'm gonna get into Batman. And I don't know did you read any of the Batman Scott Snyder stuff?
Oh, yes. Over and over again.
Well, then you'll know. And I've only read the run, like, and I didn't read, I have never finished the run because I stopped. I had a kid, and I got into the habit of going to the comic book store and just buying $40 worth of comics weekly. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I just stopped going. So I still,
makes sense.
I still need to catch up on, like, finish their run on Batman. But to this day, my favorite issue of any comic book, I don't think anyone's ever done anything as good or better, is issue 5 of their Quarter Owl run, where you're reading it, and then suddenly, like, you think there's a misprint in the comic because everything's upside down, and then you turn the page, and then everything's like on its side, and you have to keep rotating your book to read this issue where Batman is in this maze underground, and he's just like losing his mind. It is the issue is so good. I have 2 copies of it, and I don't buy 2 issues of copies. And I originally had bought 2 copies because I was going to give one away on one of the podcasts I was running at the time, but I ended up just keeping it. I have 2 copies, bagged and boarded, and had I had more time, I would have dug one of them out and brought it to me to Wizard World over the weekend, and had Capullo sign it. But I think, like, Capullo was the first guy that got me to like really look at art and like really like appreciate art, because I'm more of like story written, and word guy, and I still am, like, and I still look more to like Scott Snyder and Hope Larson and writers like that versus the artists, but I still try to find an appreciation in the art, and usually for me, because I've never cared about art before, like the guy to look at is Capullo, because I just think he's incredible.
I will say that, but DC over the last years, especially since Rebirth, has definitely gravitated towards more attracting these like in-house, like legitimate great artists, and to bring up Amanda Connor again and Jimmy Palmiotti, their run on, while everyone else is like in love with Batman, my favorite book to still read is Harley Quinn. I love Harley Quinn. And
I've heard a lot of good things.
Their run on it is incredible. And the guy that took over for them, Frank Thierry, is fantastic writer. And so like now, like Frank Quietly, who is doing the art on Doomsday Clock, another fantastic artist. And DC has a whole bunch of them. Ivan Reis, who did a run on the Justice League, just did. He was on Bendez's debut book with Man of Steel. Jim Lee is probably one of the most recognizable talents DC has to offer when it comes to art. Brett Booth. If you don't know who Brett Booth is, his run on like The Flash, and my wife doesn't read comics anymore, but when she was reading them, she was following Teen Titans, and he was on Teen Titans, and his art just glows so much.
Yeah, I have not. I think for fear of having too much to read, I have not picked up The Flash or Teen Titans or any. Like I've gravitated towards the Bat family, simply because like Hope Larson's Batgirl run is phenomenal. I still have to read her final issue, but I haven't been able to like sit down and read it and really give it the time that it needs, because like I don't want it to end. Like I really. Her run on Batgirl really does feel like a CW show. I've said this numerous times, and like on Twitter I've begged and pleaded to have like the CW just bring her on as a writer, director, or something. And if they're not going to give Batgirl her own series, which I know they're not because they're working on a movie, but like there's no reason in my mind that you can't. And obviously, again, they're not going to because Batwoman's going to be on it. But like, I would love to have Batgirl and Supergirl interact with one another. Like the first Batgirl annual with the story with her and Supergirl, like it to me it read like an episode of Supergirl. And I so badly wanted that to be a thing that happened.
Now you're talking about if I remember correctly, you're talking about the newer stuff with Rebirth.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It started Rebirth, and now I guess they just quietly removed that banner since then. But yeah. So Hope Larson has started. I think right now. I guess in June they'll release issue 24, but issue 23 was the last issue of Hope Larson's Batgirl run, which started in 2016 with Rebirth.
Because I followed little bits of where the Batgirl arc went. So like I read the first two books in the New 52, and I own the fourth volume. But like I kind of rested after a while, and then when they introduced the Burnside arc of it, I really enjoyed the Burnside arc because it was just a different take on it. It was this lighter, fluffier, like CW, like you're talking about, version of it. And I was the team that worked on that went over to Boom and actually got a chance to write a 6-issue miniseries for Kimberly Hart of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Oh, neat.
Series called Pink.
Oh, I remember. I never read it, but I do remember that.
Yeah, it was so awful.
Oh,
It had such a strong opening, and oh my goodness, it derailed by like issue like 3. It just got so weird.
that's a shame. That's a shame. But yeah, no, the Batgirl stuff is especially, specifically. I've never read Batgirl before. Before Hope, the Rebirth stuff with Hope Larson. I started reading it because for a while I was writing for a Batman website, and they didn't have many issues available that were because I wasn't allowed to read or review anything outside of the Bat family. So a lot of the titles were taken already, and so Batgirl was one of the few that was available, and I was like, all right, well, like, why, like, we're living in an age where like this, like, I mean, Supergirl's on TV, there's more and more, strong female driven things, so like there's a world where this is going to be good, and it was so good. Like I think I forget who the original artist was on that with Hope Larson, and it was his art was a little weird, and I think what it was it was a little like, and I don't want to, like, not cartoonish in like, it's hard to explain, but it was the way it was done. It didn't feel like it meshed right, and then the next guy, Chris Wildgoose, who worked on it for a real long time, his like slow, like, it morphed into what almost looks, every artist has like copied since his run on it, and it just everything, like we've said, it fits into the CW world. Like, it's bright, it's poppy, it's got the drama that a CW show has. I mean, the only thing it's missing is shirtless boys, really, is other than that, it's a CW show, and it's so like, it's to the, and I'm right now I'm reading that and Batman, and as like the two main Bat titles, and I honestly prefer Batgirl right now. Like, it's nothing against Tom King's run.
Whoa.
Well, okay, so I assume you're reading the Batman run.
I started off when Rebirth started. I followed it for a couple issues, and then my mom got me the complete first arc for Christmas.
Okay.
That year, and I was like, why am I not reading this? And then I started picking up other books, and I slowly started coming back to it, and I was just in my comic book store one day. I was like, why am I not reading Batman? And I picked up issue 44, where Booster Gold comes to create Batpoint.
Okay. So oh my God, are you caught up? Or is
I am at issue 46, so like I'll get 47 and 48 this upcoming Wednesday when they come out.
Okay. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'll tell you, I reading Batman, Tom King's run on Batman, I've been on board since issue 1 of Rebirth. I've loved everything, and I binged. So like when I started reviewing it, I couldn't just start reviewing it from reading from the issue that I was assigned. I had to go back from the beginning of Rebirth and binge it. And so I went and I binged all the issues, and maybe this is part of the issue, but I loved everything until that Booster Gold issue. I read it.
Really?
And I was like, I read it. I was like, huh, this is a big old, like, and I still, like, I think I like gave it a 7 out of 10. Like, I still enjoyed it enough, and the concepts are good, but like it felt like a big derailment to me, and I still think that it had like a really good concept, but I couldn't get behind it even. And I think I still have to. I think is 47 I think 47 is the last issue in that little mini arc there.
I think so, because like I think 48 starts the arc towards the wedding.
Yes. So I still have to officially write my review for 47 because I fell behind on all my reviews because of my day job. But I want to say I just, it was not me. Like those 3 or 4 issues, it felt really wonky, and maybe that was the purpose of it, and maybe it was. And I know a lot of people enjoy it. Like a lot of people enjoy it. I think I'm in the minority. I know I'm in the minority. Like I know I'm probably not even right. But it's just, and it, like I said, it may be because I binged read everything and in a matter of like 2 weeks, and then started reading like issue by issue with issue like 44 or no 44 is the start. Probably issue 40 is when I started reading issue by issue. I don't know. I wanted to love it. I really did, but I didn't hate it. It just was not my cup of tea.
Well, that's the way I felt like about. I've loved it so far. So like I've read the first 2 arcs, and I'm getting ready this week to pick up the 3rd issue, and then like I'm kind of reading like out of linear context. Like I
Okay.
know stuff that happens, and I'm sure that future issues will prepare me for what happens in the past. But I also read the button too, so I guess throw that in there. But that's how I felt about Frank Thierry coming on to Harley Quinn. I was really hesitant about it because I had never read anything from him, and like Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner had set the bar so high for my love of Harley Quinn that when I got their first volume in trade paperback, I had never read it before, blew through it in 2 hours. Like, I fell in love. And his run on it, like, he just took some of, like, the most he stretched to, like, the furthest reaches of the most, like, the darkest corners of the DC universe and reinvented these characters from, like, 50s and 60s that are probably, like, F-level villains and brought them into mainstream and like just recreated it. And I think that was one of the things that I really appreciated about Tom King's run on Batman was that he's taking these villains that are in the rogue gallery but aren't really getting that haven't really been a mainstay for quite some time, because Tom King, when you look at his run, or not Tom King, Scott Snyder, you look at his run, they introduced the Court of the Owls, then they introduced the Joker, then they had a prequel year of Red Hood Gang and the Riddler, and then they brought the Joker back. And they kind of like quietly closed out that run. I mean, that's in a nutshell pretty much how they handled it. So like, I applaud them for like, they went after a lot of mainstream, whereas Tom King is really kind of pulled back and he's really kind of gone after the Banes and Amanda Waller and Catwoman, and I really loved that aspect. Even Psycho Pirate, I loved the fact that they brought him in.
I really like it's as silly as the character is, like Kite Man I've really enjoyed.
Yes.
And I really like what he did with like how he made like that silly character. Like there's a whole issue where I don't know if you read it, but like the whole issue about Kite Man basically where like you actually kind of feel for Kite Man. Like it's such a good issue, and I really enjoyed it, and it's like it was an issue that I was before I started reviewing it, so I didn't get a chance to review it because it was happened like years, like months in the past at the very least, and but it was like a solid 10 out of 10 comic. Like I really enjoyed that one, and Frank, I'm terrible with his last name, Frank Thierry.
That's how I say it.
Okay. The only work I've read from him, and I haven't read any of his Harley Quinn stuff yet. I want to. I just need to find time to get on board with it. And because because I have OCD, I'll start with the previous run and binge it. But Dark Metal, the Metal.
Yes, he did.
Event.
He did do that. I forgot about that. He was in one of the issues. He had like one of the character issues, and then I think he also happened to be on like one of the external issues as well.
He did for sure two of the Dark Knights. He did the Devastator and the Murder Machine. And here's like he's a guy who is like Scott Snyder level good to me. And again, like Scott Snyder is like one of the bars I have for writers and comics. And his like out of all, I want to say out of all the, I guess they did 7 of the Dark Knight solo books. I want to say his and maybe the Batman Who Laughs book. Those 3, I think, were the only ones that I was like I gave 10 out of 10s on. The issue I had a lot of, and I don't know if you read read any of the side issues with.
I did. I read the entire 26 arc.
Okay, so for me, like an issue I had with the Red Death issue was that I didn't understand any of the motivation behind why evil Bruce Wayne, who becomes a hybrid of Batman and the Flash, like I don't understand why he went psycho and killed the Flash at all. Like it was actually, that may have been one of the ones that I rated the worst. And again, that was probably, I think the worst I've ever given the comic is a 7. So it's not like I hate the thing, but like I did not understand it. But both the Devastator and the Murder Machine, things happen to Bruce Wayne in those alternate Earths that I understand why that's the path he could take to become an evil Batman. And I think Frank Thierry just did he's such a great, like him, and I forget whoever wrote the wait, is one of those who's the Devastator? That's
Devastator, I don't know off the top of my head.
Was that the Superman one?
Devastator was the Superman one because he inhaled the Doomsday virus.
Yes, and the Murder Machine was Cyborg. So those 2 were good. And then reading the Green Lantern one,
Dawnbreaker.
Dawnbreaker. That one, like I read that the first time I wasn't a huge fan, but like I read it a second or third time, and I became a huge fan of it. And I don't know, I needed those characters, those evil Batman, to have a reason to be evil. And Frank Thierry gave his 2 books reasons for them to be evil, and I really loved it.
So I'm actually gonna jump in and tell you why the motivation behind the Red Death is what it is. It's the same motivation of the Reverse Flash and Zoom and Godspeed. Well, I can't speak for Godspeed because, you know, I've read that arc yet. But essentially, like, in the Flash mythos, like, for some reason, this is my theory, is that Batman, Bruce Wayne, in that universe experienced the Speed Force. So in experiencing the Speed Force, he saw this power that he could have. And it essentially broke him the way that the Joker got broken out of Ace Chemicals. Mm-hmm. And the reason that he kills the Flash is for the power. So that's the reason that if you have ever read any of the Flash, like Flash Rebirth, the actual Rebirth from Jeff Johns years ago is a great example of that, because it showcases that, you know, Thawne wanted his speed so that he could be the best.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm a Flash TV fan, but I've never read the comics. So I guess if I was deeper in the Flash mythos, maybe that book would have made more sense. Did they touch on the fact that like Bruce Wayne, Batman in that universe, had experienced the Speed Force? Like, was that mentioned?
He, like, all right, so, like, from what I remember, because it's been a couple months, and I've read a lot since then, but from what I remember, there's a moment between Bruce and Barry where Bruce is trying to convince him to go back in time to save his mom, to the alley, and that's essentially kind of what I remember.
Yeah, I should go back and reread it because I mean that metal event was pretty. Like I really enjoyed the metal event. I'm not a big event guy because it just involves reading so much usually. And really, the last one I remember really liking was the original Civil War back in 2006. And metal just captured my imagination so much. And maybe it's because I'm more of a DC guy now. Like I just enjoy reading DC books. I really enjoyed that whole crossover event with metal. And I'm like, I guess I don't have the full picture of what like the next thing is with No Justice and the new Justice Leagues, but I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it.
I enjoyed I'm halfway through No Justice right now, and
yeah, so am I.
It's been a good run for what it is.
Yeah,
like I don't know, like to me, like I'm a Justice League guy, but I prefer reading Justice League more in the trades than I do in like issue by issue. Like right now, I am following the Shattered Grid Power Ranger titles, Harley Quinn and Batman and Doomsday Clock whenever they release it. But like those are like my 4 like go-tos right now. Like everything else, if I want to read it, it's like I'll wait till the trade comes out.
Yeah, and you have to make those decisions if with if you're going to read so many titles, like it gets too expensive otherwise. But yeah, No Justice. I enjoyed No Justice 1, but I felt like it was a lot of setup and very little payoff. I think even I mean I guess the end was kind of neat, but. No Justice 2 definitely, I think, was better, and because there was a lot more action and started to make sense. Because I like the idea of taking the teams and like just screwing with them, and putting in these different combination of heroes that we maybe have never seen before. So I'm hoping that I've committed to myself to drink a bunch of coffee tonight and finish reading No Justice tonight and writing my reviews for him. So we'll see if that actually happens or not. But so because it's we started late, we're getting up to our hour here. So before I officially let you go, we've covered victims and villains, and I guess we remind people what victims and villains is, because I think we've alluded to what your podcast is about, but I don't think we've actually since a year ago officially said what your podcast is about.
So Victims and Villains is the marriage between pop culture and suicide prevention. We talk all things in the world of pop culture, be it video games, music, movies, or comics, and we do it with the heart to let people know that there is a better way. And we use our resources and our talents to provide those better ways for you guys.
And before we get into your final plugs about where they can find the show and your festival show, I did go over just the very basic notes I had from our last conversation. So since our last conversation, not only has I think Wonder Woman had already been out, but only for a couple weeks. So we've had that, and we've had Justice League in the DC world, and you and I had a conversation about Batman versus Superman. So I think we can all skip over Wonder Woman. We know it was great. What were your thoughts on Justice League?
Justice League was Justice League to me, I feel like was I would compare it to Last Jedi. It could have been great, but it wasn't. Yeah. And I would say that the parts that made it great, could have made it great, were minimized, and the parts that should have been minimized were maximized. So with the Justice League movie, I felt like in the beginning of the setup, I wanted to be more invested into the Arthur and Vic character with Aquaman and Cyborg, but in the end, I'm learning about
the why am I learning about the how Martha and Lois is dealing with Clark's death, and why do I care about a Russian family? Like, to me, like, and I think the reason that I am severely kind of pissed about it is I heard about all the great things, and like we've heard about all these great things that Zack Snyder has envisioned for that film and what it should have been, and what we got was just a subpar movie with great actors.
Yeah, it's I think the benefit I had is I was not a fan of Batman versus Superman. I've that's been very vocal. I guess really, I mean, that's not fair to say either, because I didn't go see it in the theater because I didn't think it looked good, and I'm not a huge fan of Snyder's take on on the DC universe. But I did. I mean, when I eventually did see Batman vs Superman, it was on HBO and with zero expectations, and I was sick, so I decided to watch it. And it wasn't as bad as I had built it up in my head. But that being said, like going into Justice League, I was like prepared. It helped that I had that was my first Movie Pass movie. So I like it was like I'm basically seeing this for free at this point. And it was the super low expectations. Like I walked into that movie and I walked out saying, I had an okay time. Like it wasn't Avengers good at all, but it was still like it's going to be a movie that I forget about at some point. But it wasn't like I didn't hate it. I also didn't love it. It was one of those movies like the Last Jedi comparison for me is a bad, because I enjoyed The Last Jedi. It's a movie that, like, for me, it generated so much discussion that, like, to me it was a good movie. And specifically because, like, there was people that didn't like it, and I was able to have conversations about it. But Justice League it was a movie that happened. I got great little moments, like you've said, and really, like, I could watch Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck be those characters all day long and be happy.
Yeah, like I didn't walk out like disappointed. I mean, I kind of did, but like I was still entertained at the end of the day, yes. And that's what a movie is supposed to do.
Yes.
A movie is supposed to either make you laugh, make you cry, make you feel something. You should never walk out of a movie the same way you walked in with the movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah, but I think to that, like, to kind of counter your point on Justice League doing that, like I for me, like, I want a movie to do all those things, but I also want it to, like, if it's going to be a really good movie and mean something, like, it should. Like, I couldn't tell you anything about that movie except for the fact that, like, it did make me look forward to seeing Aquaman in a movie. Like, I really liked his performance as Aquaman. I'm baffled by the decision not to have Grant Gustin play the Flash, because from what Snyder said, oh, we're going a different direction. But to me, Ezra Miller's Flash was not serious and was just as goofy as Grant Gustin's Flash. But I enjoyed Ezra Miller. I thought he did a great take on the Flash. All the characters were great. All the actors were great. But, like, I can't really tell you much about the movie except that they got together and they were a team of justice.
Yeah, and the thing that, has now come out since was that we were supposed to be getting a Darkseid cameo. And to me, like, if you wanted to see, it's like, and that's the thing too, is that, spoiler alert, the post-credit scene builds up for the Injustice League or the Legion of Doom. Mm-hmm. And I felt like if that was the end goal right there, what was the point of having Steppenwolf be the villain? Because essentially, mindset-wise, is you have Steppenwolf setting up for Darkseid, similar to the way that the Chitauri and Loki were setting up for Thanos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's while I'm not a fan of Snyder, and I am a bigger fan of Whedon, I do think that there was a misstep in the way they handled that movie, and Whether it was truly because Snyder had to walk away because of having to deal with family issues, or if it was more of a DC and Warner Brothers saying we want to go a different direction. I don't know. I feel like there could have been a better. I mean, I feel like Solo is suffering, and not so much quality of film wise, but I think there was such a everyone knew that Justice League, just like everyone knew that Solo, there was this big controversy over the directors, and I think that for both films it probably hurt it in just like buzz, yeah, but also for at least I think Justice League more so than Solo, it hurt it quality wise. As much as I would rather see a Whedon Justice League, we didn't get that. We didn't quite get a Snyder Justice League. We got some sort of weird concoction of both, and I think we should have probably just gotten the Snyder Justice League. I think that would have made the most, especially, I mean, that's what this whole world was building towards. I don't think there's any way that you could say, hey, Joss Whedon, without reshooting this entire film, save this movie. And again, I'm using that term as a Whedon fan. I'm sure a lot of Snyder fans would say he ruined the movie. But it just was, I think, a gross misstep to say, let's try to make some sort of, try to lighten this up and make it more Avengers.
Yeah, and I feel like now that they've just kind of overstretched themselves because since we in the last year as a podcast, we've kind of gone from, discussing multiple different things to kind of like having like one base subject. And we were covering like these news stories a lot. There was so much news stories that we were covering in 2017 that were, this director just got hired for this movie, and it was like I think by the end of last year they had announced a Batgirl movie, a Nightwing movie, a Birds of Prey movie, possible Gotham City Sirens movie, Suicide Squad 2, Aquaman, Wonder Woman 2, Justice League Part 2. Like, they had just announced like all of these things, but like didn't really have a clear vision. Yeah. And even now, like, they don't really have a clear vision because you haven't heard any news about Nightwing. Batgirl has lost its director. Gotham City Sirens is now going to feature Catwoman. It's not going to feature Catwoman anymore. So, like, I just don't think that they have a clear vision past this world of these three movies that they're already having in production, with Aquaman being finished, Shazam, and then the Wonder Woman sequel. Like, we don't even know what's going on with this Ben Affleck movie, which really bugs me because I love Matt Reeves, and I really want to see a Batman Matt Reeves.
Yeah, well, and I think we're still going to get that movie. I think the bigger question is it going to be Affleck? And I think the biggest issue is obviously Warner Brothers and DC felt like they were behind, and they rushed to get their team together. And I think they didn't necessarily have a guy like Kevin Feige. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but the movie version of Stan Lee, Kev, they didn't have a guy like him. I think they were trying to make Snyder that guy, but I think there was also like there was other people kind of still pulling the strings, and then it like have that one guy to help shape what they were doing. And that's, I think, the big issue, one of the big issues. And I think at this point, like, they need to, like, all right, Aquaman is going to be somehow tied to the rest of the movie verse, I'm sure, because that was in the middle of production and filming when Justice League was in the process of failing. So I think that just Shazam's an easy movie, I think, to just like play outside of that whole world. Wonder Woman 2, because it's a period piece, and I think the Wonder Woman series should always be a period piece. It's pretty easy for that to operate outside of the world of the universe. So I think they're like, once Aquaman comes out, like they can start just going back to. They did a really good job at doing standalone movies that didn't intertwine, and I think that there's a world where if you still want to do Justice League movies and still have these characters interact with each other, I think there's a way to do that and not do it the Marvel way, but also not do it the hastened way that they've done it. I think you can just kind of do movies like Wonder Woman and still have little tiny references to the rest of the world, and then eventually they meet for Justice League.
Well, I think that too, like you're talking about, like there needs to be a Kevin Feige, and I think that when Jeff Johns was stepping into the world of, you know, being more into film, he's the perfect guy to do it because he's been writing these comics for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, he's done Teen Titans. He has done the Green Lantern Corps. He's done Blackest Night. He has done the Dark Side War. He has done an incredible run on Justice League and The Flash. And he knows these characters, and he's done Batman as well. So, like, he would be the perfect guy to do that. Like, granted, yes, that would take him away from writing the comics, but I mean, at the same time, like, I would like to have more experiences like Wonder Woman when I go see a DC film. Like,
yeah, and it's nuts that, and I guess to be fair, we haven't had in what the DCEU is. We haven't had a solo Batman film yet. Like that, the Nolan stuff is outside of the DCEU. But since like the kickoff with Man of Steel. You know, we've had every movie has had some sort of controversy except for this solo Wonder Woman movie. I would really like to see a solo Batman movie, and I would even like to see a solo Superman movie, but that's not like Superman's been really dark and gritty, and I don't think that's the Superman we want. At least I don't want, and it's definitely I don't think the Superman we need in 2018 when the world's kind of shitty right now. You know, like I think that the whole purpose of having Superman is to make the world feel less shitty and less dark and less gritty.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't mind Man of Steel, and again, when I was here last year, like I didn't mind also Batman versus Superman. I enjoyed it for what it like. I still to this day like it. I very much enjoyed it. I defend it still on our show and in conventions and to fellow nerds. But to me, like, I have appreciated everything that they have done. Now, Suicide Squad and Justice
I forgot about that movie.
and Justice League, you know, they're entertaining. I mean, yes, like but could have just been. They still were like sloppy and still could have been better. And I think that that's the one thing that I would have wanted to see. And I think that, you know, instead of, you know, this is the thing that I don't understand about Justice League was if we have, you know, understudies for like directors like first and second units or assistant directors, why are they not filling in and bringing the original vision to life?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too. Suicide Squad's a whole other thing because I still have yet to watch that movie. I can't bring myself to do it. It's
You're not missing much.
Yeah, I tried. I fell asleep. Maybe one day I will make myself do it, but yeah, Justice League. You're right. Yeah, I think they should have kept. You committed to something. This is what, like, I think that's Warner Brothers' big problem is that they rushed to not necessarily beat, but to meet Marvel at what they were doing in the movie world, and then they were doing it in a different way. It may not have been the way I enjoyed necessarily, but they were doing it in a different way, and they should have committed to that move and let it play it out, because you know what? Either way, even if it was a disaster, like you're in the same boat now. Like either way, you would have been in the same boat. I think I don't think there's any way you could have injected another director, Joss Whedon or anyone else, and had it be successful. But you probably had a shot at being successful with Justice League with just having Snyder's vision, and I think they blew it.
Yeah, and I mean it. They did. I mean, long story short, they blew it. Like I was still entertained, but there's a lot about that film that I would would have liked to see different. Like to me, like I would dare to put Justice League and Suicide Squad in the same category as Batman and Robin. Like,
well, Suicide Squad probably for sure.
Like I would say that they're not a first movie, but like once every few years, like they're still entertaining.
Yeah,
I would still watch them. So
I don't know that I mean, eventually I'll watch Suicide Squad, so I can just say like, at least I could back up why I hate it. Because I can't say that I hate it. I can't watch it. But like, for me, Justice League, like I will watch that. If you put a gun to my head and said watch Justice League or Batman versus Superman, I'm gonna watch Justice League all day. Because to me, I feel like Justice League is the better movie. But I also think that, like I said, I went into that movie with a completely different mindset. The previews actually sold that movie, I think, better than the Batman versus Superman previews. Plus, for me, I guess the Whedon effect did have a positive thing because it wasn't just all dark and moody, and I really liked. I think the only thing I really didn't like of that movie was the Superman stuff. Like and from what I understand, the Superman stuff is what Whedon had his hand in a lot, like the new Superman stuff that was in there. So there's just for me, Justice League, like I will watch. Like if I happen to stumble upon it, I'll buy it on DVD eventually, and I'll watch it. Like I'll willingly watch Justice League and smile doing it. I will. I don't know if I'll ever buy Batman vs Superman. I like to say that I try to buy all the comic book movies to support them, but I don't know that I'll ever actually sit down and watch it. So I don't know that I would. I think I would turn it off if it was on TV. Like,
wow.
And it's raining. It just. Again, I watch it. When I did watch it, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to hate it. But I just don't know that I as a guy who doesn't like Man of Steel, I'd rather watch Man of Steel than Batman vs Superman. I think the only movie that I would not watch before is Suicide Squad. Honestly, like out of the DC movies,
I no. Nope. I disagree. Like I think the only reason I don't watch Batman versus Superman as much as I love it is I just can't commit to, like, because if I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna watch the ultimate cut. So I can't commit to a 3-hour movie every time I want to sit down. Like I would watch Watchmen more if I could sit down and do that. Like Watchmen is right up there with some of my favorite movies, but I don't know. Like it's good like once a year, maybe every other year.
And you know what? Maybe I need to give that extended viewing a watch and judge it on that versus just the original theater cut that I watched on HBO. But yeah, no, I would willingly watch Justice League once a year and even probably more. Like if it happened to be on and there was nothing else, it's to me Justice League is it's truly. Like it's a comic book come to life, and I think, like I said, I think Avengers is that as well, but it just does it better than Justice League does. So I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's and I think that's like I think I would probably let my maybe when he's like 7 or 8, I'll let my kid watch Justice League. I still I think a 6-year-old might be a little young for that one still, but. Yeah, I don't know. It's just DC needs to do better at movies. They need to be more. They all need to be like Wonder Woman. I think Patty Jenkins should be in charge.
Yeah, no. I would like to see other voices in there.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think I don't know. I really don't know what DC can do to like really say. I agree. Here's where I think DC and we can kind of leave it on this note. I think DC should be now, and Warner Brothers should now be the studio. If they really want to set themselves apart, be the studio that takes what some people, I don't think so. I love comic book movies. I'm not fatigued by it, but there's definitely people that are fatigued by superhero movies. There are definitely people who have an issue with the way Marvel does things because they all kind of feel like the same movie, and they have there's a cookie cutter way to make these movies. Be the theater, or be the company, the studio that breaks that mold and tell interesting stories in different genres. Like, take those characters, like and obviously this isn't DC doing it or Warner Brothers, but I really like the idea of them taking a superhero story with the New Mutants and putting it in a horror context. Like, that seems so crazy bonkers good. Like, take Batman and stop doing action movies with him. Do an actual noir detective movie. Do it low budget so you don't have to, worry about losing money. Do something like that. Like, just do movies in different genres than just the generic comic book action. And I think they could find success doing that because it would be something different that the audience hasn't seen yet.
They are way ahead of you because back in April, it was announced Steven Spielberg's next project is going to be Black Hawk, which is a DC-based property that is essentially like a comic book version of Saving Private Ryan.
I did hear that, and I think that's great, and but I think I'd also like to see them do that. And I know New Mutants necessarily isn't maybe mainstream, but the fact that it has the word mutants in it, I think everyone's gonna know that it has something to do with X-Men. So I would like to see DC do that with something more mainstream, and it doesn't have to be like one of the big three, but like Green Lanterns, like that, like the Green Lanterns movie, you could totally do like a buddy cop movie or something like that. Like, you could do something different than just standard like comic book action things go boom. And that would be Green Lanterns. I think is a good one to pull from. It has like a mainstream name recognition, but you don't have to like. I don't think the average moviegoer, they might know who Green Lantern is, but they don't know like who Hal Jordan is. They don't know who. I'm so blanking on all the rest of the Green Lanterns.
John Stewart, Gardner.
Yeah, like those. They don't know who those guys are. Like, the Green Lantern's a guy who wears a green suit. That's all they know. And I would imagine, unfortunately, most of them probably associate with some sort of white guy. But like, have Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, or Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner. Like, have like a buddy cop movie feel, or have like Jon Stewart. Like, I would like a Jon Stewart Green Lantern movie. I don't want Hal Jordan. I don't want Guy Gardner. I want Jon Stewart, and have Jon Stewart and like an alien be a buddy cop, space cops. Like. I don't know. I feel like that would be a fun way to do a superhero movie that's not necessarily something that we've seen before.
I mean, you might be getting it. So that was the idea coming forward, but I don't know. Again, DC doesn't seem like they know what they're doing. So
yeah. They need, like I said, they need someone, whether it be Jeff Johns or maybe someone else who's not so tightly still in the comic community. They need somebody that's their Kevin Feige or Feige or whatever to just steer that ship. Because the thing that I don't want to see, the thing that I fear is we see a bad Batman movie, and I don't want to I don't want to see a bad Batman movie, and we've yet to see a bad take on Batman since the Batman and Robin days. Like, obviously Bale was good. I really love Ben Affleck as Batman, and I want to see more of Ben Affleck as Batman, and hopefully we get him in Matt Reeves' movie, and it will be. And that's the one, like, I'm really looking for, out of everything that's like, is it happening or is it not happening? That's the one I'm looking forward to the most, because I feel like that could be, like, it could still feel like a noir detective movie. It's just maybe a little bit more big budget.
Yeah, and I mean Matt Reeves is perfect for that. I feel like what he was able to accomplish with the Apes movies is phenomenally underrated, and he's one of the best storytellers working in the industry today. So I'm really excited to see what he would be able to do in the hands of Gotham City and Batman, and I would really like to see a Black Mask Batman movie, but apparently Penguin's now the top choice, so
Yeah,
interesting.
and while like I would like to see like maybe a not Danny DeVito take on the Penguin, like something that's maybe like more like I really like Robin Lord Taylor's take on the Penguin, so maybe that's something like and mind you, I'm a couple seasons behind, so maybe it's
He has gotten super annoying.
Oh, really? Interesting. Well, the first I've watched the first 2 seasons for sure, and I really liked him in the first 2 seasons. So if it's somewhere in the middle of those 2 versions of the Penguin we've seen, it could be great. But what I really liked about like the Nolan Batmans is that the villains were not it wasn't your mainstream villains, and I think making it the Penguin, who's a little bit more mainstream and something that we've already seen, could be a mistake. And honestly, also, I don't know if that character, the Penguin, fits into a noir story. Like, maybe I just can't picture it, but if you're going to go noir detective, I don't know if Penguin's the good foil for that. I don't know that I have an answer off the top of my head that's better, but I would like to see something that's not as mainstream, because it's just, I feel like it's always more fun when it's off the beaten path a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I really wanted to see, especially after seeing Justice League, like I really wanted to see what a Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke would have been.
Oh, that would have been great. Like, that would have been great. And again, I don't know if that would have worked in a noir detective setting, but it definitely would have been something that, we've seen that character on Arrow, but again, is he mainstream because of that? I don't think so. I don't think the people watching Arrow are the people that are going to go flock to a Batman movie. I mean, obviously they are, but I guess the people flocking to a Batman movie aren't necessarily watching Arrow on the CW. So I think that would have been like a really neat, and hopefully they incorporate him into it still, but that would have been a neat hero, or villain rather, because again, like, off the beaten path. Again,
his comic right now on point.
Yeah, that's one that I need to read too. Like everyone talks a lot. I need to stop podcasting. I need to stop being creative, and I just need to start reading and not doing anything else. That's how you read a lot of comics. You just stop being a creative person. Don't do that, kids. Be creative.
Yeah, that's actually, we meet a lot of comic creators, and talk to them off mic, and they'll be like, yeah, I don't really read all that much because I create so much. And I'm like, man, I need those days. Like, as much as we putting 2 episodes out a week and doing events and YouTube and guest spots like this, I need my time to unwind and release my brain.
Totally, and I would like to have more time to do it, and eventually I think, like, especially like we did 3 live shows in the matter of, I think, 60 days, and now I have this little month break before the festival, and then I'm not planning on doing another show until maybe Keystone Comic-Con, and then January. So like once the Philly Podcast Fest is over, I am finally going to hopefully be caught up on all my podcasting and editing and just being both a creative and a content consumer, because I need to read more comics, and
just give it all to me.
All right, well, that's a good segue. So before I let you go, let's get your plugs out and let us know about your festival appearance.
Absolutely. So we are going to be appearing at Amalgam Comics and Coffee House
And June 23rd at 3 p.m., we will be discussing all things in the world of Toy Story and suicide prevention, which leads me to this. If you guys are listening to this right now and you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, you guys feel free to reach out to us. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Victims and Villains. You guys can also go to victimsandvillains.net for all past episodes. And hopefully by the time this drops, we'll also be have our review section up so you guys can watch past YouTube videos that we've done. But you guys can also get resources to get the help that you guys are doing. And just off the top of my head, you guys can call the Suicide Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255, or also text anonymously to 741-741.
Josh, thank you for all that great info. That is something I'm a advocate for Bullies Keep Out. Who they it's more than just suicide that they kind of talk about, but that's obviously something that's huge for them. I'm a terrible advocate because I don't have that stuff memorized. I always have to look it up and put it in my show notes. So thanks for having that information. And again, like, I sit around and talk about the same kind of stuff you guys normally do, but I have no real great power message to go with it. You guys are doing really good work. Thanks, and whatnot. So thank you for being, the content creator that you are, but also for having like a meaning behind it.
No problem. I couldn't imagine doing our show without it, because when you step into podcasting, I think no one understands it until you actually are knee deep in it. Podcasting is like stepping into an ocean.
Yeah.
There is thousands of podcasts every which way you look, and you have to do something that's going to really stand out. And I think that what we were finding from doing conventions was that there was a lot of depression and a lot of escape. People were running to these fandoms as a way of holding on to hope. And so why not kind of move past that and bring those resources into those worlds and marry the two?
I don't think there's a better way to end this episode than kind of on that message there. So Josh, thanks for doing the show, and good luck at the festival. All right, thanks to Josh once again for being on the show. I can't thank you enough for doing this 2 years in a row now. And I hope that we can make something work out for a live show appearance with one another, whether it's the January event or one of the other events that I run throughout the year. I think after the Podcast Fest, we're going to go a little silent, unless we do the Keystone comic book convention. But until our January show, because I'm really going to put a lot of focus into that. We're making big changes and whatnot. And I think Josh's show, Victims and Villains, would make a pretty good fit for that one-day festival of ours. So make sure you find Victims and Villains, of course, on iTunes and whatnot. But Victims and Villains, victimsandvillains.net. He will be performing live on June 23rd at a Malcolm Comics and Coffee House at 3 p.m. While you're thinking about the festival, make sure you come out to Tattooed Moms on July 1st. We're kicking off, Everything is Awesome. It's kicking off the last day of the festival at 1 p.m. And it's going to be a fun time. I'm working on getting some good guests. And it's just going to be a fun late night experience in the afternoon. And make sure you go to phillypodfest.com/schedule for the complete schedule for the 2018 Philadelphia Podcast Festival. And of course, please support the show. You already supported enough by listening to us. I'm just asking for a little bit more. I'm a oneer. I'm a taker. Solo, Han Solo he's a pilot. He's a flyer. I'm a oneer. I'm a taker. You can support us on patreon.com/thatentertains. That's where you can help support us with some money. $1 a month is like nothing. It's less than a cup of coffee, and it helps support this show and the whole That's Entertainment brand, from our website where we do comic book reviews and movie reviews, to our podcast network where we have some great shows, and we are really looking to get our hosting fees covered, and from there We can start paying our talent. We can start having an emergency fund for when equipment breaks across the board, whether it's my own personal equipment or it's something that one of the other podcasts need, a microphone to be replaced, or a mixer or whatever. We can start upgrading equipment for my show and all the other shows in the network. So that's a great way to support us, $1 a month. And it gets you, it's Patreon in short is basically a subscription service. It gets you, with us, a bare minimum of early access to all our content. And of course, you can support us on iTunes with 5 stars, ratings, and reviews. Apple Math gets us in front of more ears. More ears means more people are listening. And more people are listening means we can do bigger and cooler things. And that's what I'm going to do. We really, as you'll hear later this month, you'll hear a couple panels that we were able to run at the Philadelphia Comic Con and at Wizard World. And that was such a fun time that I want to do more stuff like that. But we need the support to do that, and I hope that you come out to support us at our live shows, like the one on July 1st at Tattoo Bombs at 1 p.m., and of course, word of mouth recommendations. Hey, guys, I've kept you long enough. This was a really long conversation with Josh, but a really, I think, interesting one. I enjoyed it. A lot of great, just general pop culture stuff, and of course, a lot of good information that Josh gave at the end of the show about suicide prevention and what to do if you're feeling like you're at that level. And he was better. He was able to articulate that better than I am. But we'll have all that information in the show notes. Please, please, please remember, if you are feeling that way, there's plenty of people to reach out to. There's Josh from Victims of Villains. There's Bullies Keep Out, who we support and I'm an advocate for. There's me. There's Everything Is Awesome. There's Tellus. There's all these different venues that you can go to and just, say hi and have a dialogue, and I'll do what I can and point you in the right direction if I need to, and so will all these other people. So, just take a minute and think, and because you can't take suicide back. That's permanent, and that's a permanent solution for a temporary problem. So thank you guys for listening. Of course, you can find us on awesomepodcast.com. We're part of the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network on coretemparts.com. And I say it every week. We've been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Core Temp Arts shows, visit coretemparts.com.